Hi, this is Dan with the Cheesemaker. Today we're going to make feta cheese at home. Now we're going to use cow's milk because I don't have good access to sheep's milk, but you can still make a great feta style cheese in your own kitchen using cow's milk as long as you have the right ingredients, the right cultures, and another ingredient we'll use lipase to help open up the flavor. But we're going to make a great feta today. It's easy to do. You can do it too. We've got everything at www.thecheesemaker.com for you. Let me show you how. Okay, well, let's go through everything we need to make feta in your own kitchen. And in the meantime, I've got 2 gallons of milk warming in a double boiler back here. We're going to warm it to 93 degrees. We're using a mesophilic thermophilic combined feta culture today. So we're going to use the Milkman feta cheese culture. I love how the feta turns out. It's got a great mouthfeel. It's really flavorful. And it makes just a really nice feta cheese. And it comes with a recipe card, which is easy to follow to make your feta in your own kitchen. The other items we'll need will be calcium chloride. Because I'm using pasteurized milk, you want to use calcium chloride before you add your rennet. This will give you stronger curds when you're using pasteurized milk. We'll be using rennet. I'll be using the Milkman veal animal rennet. It's a great rennet. You can also use, for feta, you can use really a microbial rennet as well. It'll do great, as will chymosin, so a non-animal rennet. So you have your options there. We're going to use the animal rennet today. Again, we'll be adding lipase to open up the flavors of the feta to be more of a feta flavor, since we're using cow's milk, but a lot of people use this also when they're using sheep or goat's milk. It just really gives a sharper flavor to the feta, which you might be accustomed to. We'll need cheese salt for drying the curds, and also potentially if you're going to brine your feta at the end of it, different ways to store your feta, we'll go through that. But we'll need some cheese salt that's not iodized with no additives. So we have cheese making salt ready to go. And I'm going to end up shaping the curds in these square molds. They drain really well, and I can stack them to put just a little bit of pressure on the curds. You don't have to press feta, but sometimes a little bit of light pressure, and you can take one on, just kind of alternate them while we're aging, which again, we'll show you a little bit later. So right now we're warming the milk to 93. When we reach that target, we will add culture and let it ripen. And again, we'll just follow our instructions. So we'll go to 93, we'll add the culture, then we'll add the lipase, and then we'll let it ripen for 60 minutes. So we'll come back when we're at 93, we'll get ready to go. Let's take a quick look at the ingredients that we'll be using. You can see I've got these small mini measuring spoons. They go from actually a 64th of a teaspoon up to a quarter. They're very, very handy. You can get those at cheesemaker.com as well. So we'll be adding once the milk is at temperature, we'll be adding our culture. We'll be adding 1/8 of a teaspoon of our culture. We'll sprinkle it across the top, let it sit there for a couple minutes, then gently mix it in with a whisk. We'll add lipase. Now lipase, we're going to put a small amount, a quarter teaspoon, into the filtered water and rehydrate it. And then we'll add that to the milk with the culture. At that point, we'll let it ripen for an hour. And after which, we'll then add calcium chloride. And calcium chloride, again, strengthens those curd bonds from when you're using pasteurized milk. So this is a great calcium chloride. We'll just mix a quarter teaspoon, again, in with a little bit of filtered water. That allows it to disperse more evenly throughout your milk. After adding the calcium chloride, we'll be adding rennet. We'll be using the Milkman liquid animal rennet. It's organic and it's a great rennet. And again, but you can use really any type rennet you want, get great feta, and we'll dilute that first also in a little bit of filtered water so it disperses nicely throughout the milk. And I'll show you when we add rennet, we're very careful. We add the rennet, we stir it a couple of times up and down, gently, and stop. You don't vigorously mix in your rennet because it starts working very quickly and you don't want to disturb the bonds and the curd formation. Okay, our milk is at 93 Fahrenheit, so we are going to turn the heat off. It'll hold temperature well. We'll now add the culture. We'll add 1/8 teaspoon of the Milkman Feta culture. We'll just sprinkle it across the top and we'll let it rehydrate for a couple of minutes. Then we'll whisk it in, and then we're going to let it ripen for an hour at this temperature, of course, with the heat off. Okay, we're now going to add lipase. We've added the culture. We're going to add lipase. Again, this opens up the sharper flavors of feta. We're going to mix 1/8 of a teaspoon in a little bit of distilled water and mix that in with the culture and allow it to continue to ripen. All right, so we've added the culture and we've added the lipase, and we're now going to let it ripen for 1 hour, and the lactic acid will be broken down, or the lactose will be broken down into lactic acid. That will create a more acid environment before we add calcium chloride and rennet in the next step. So we'll start the timer and counting down for 1 hour. All right, well, it's been 60 minutes, so our milk is appropriately ripened, and we are ready to add the next ingredients and take the next step. So next we will be adding calcium chloride. Again, using pasteurized milk, use calcium chloride. I put a 1/4 teaspoon in a small amount of filtered water. So we're adding that to the milk, and then we're mixing in with a whisk. And again, we haven't added any rennet yet, so we can stir that up pretty good. It acts pretty quickly, so you don't really need to wait too long before adding rennet. And we're ready to add rennet now. And again, we're using this particular rennet, the Milkman liquid animal rennet. Again, as I noted earlier, you can use chymosin or a microbial rennet. You can use a dry rennet, a powder rennet. This is a great rennet, but there are many rennets, and you can use one that you like or that you already have. That'll work great. So I put a 1/4 teaspoon of rennet into a small amount of filtered water as well to disperse more evenly. I'm going to pour it in. I'm going to mix up and down. I'm not going to really agitate the milk tremendously here. The rennet starts to act very quickly and starts forming bonds. So you don't want to stir your milk. Just want to make sure you get the rennet well dispersed around the milk. And that should do it. And now we're going to let it rest. And we're still at 93 degrees. It holds temperature very well. And then again, as you look at your recipe, you'll see that we're going to let this set for 45 minutes. And then we're going to check for a firm break. If we don't have a good set from the rennet at that point, we'll let it go a little longer, but we'll start with 45 minutes and we'll check in on it. All right, it's been 45 minutes. So we're going to check for a clean break. If it's not quite there, we'll let it go a little longer. And I can see it's firming up nicely, but it's not a clean break at this point. So we're going to let it go another 20 minutes and we'll check back on it then. That's not uncommon, by the way. You sort of just have to check things out as you're allowing the rennet to do its thing. And sometimes let it just go a little bit longer. All right, so we let it go another 20 minutes and let's have a look. And that is a really nice clean break. You can see that. It's sort of a pudding consistency, but very firm. You can see the whey, the clear whey, oozing up through the center root. So we are ready to go on to the next step, which will be cutting the curds into 1-inch cubes. And we'll do that with our curd knife. And then we'll let them rest in the liquid. We'll stir them for about 20 minutes, slowly, gently, in here. And then we'll let them rest for about 10 minutes after that. So the next step will be cutting the curds. And you'll see we just use a curd knife. And it goes right through. And then we'll cut the other direction. We'll get nice columns. And then we'll cut the longer columns into approximately, doesn't need to be precise, approximately 1-inch cubes. So I did check the temperature. We're at 92. So after all this time, of course, there's been no heat under it. It's held temperature extremely well. Now we'll just go the other direction. We'll give them a couple minutes after I cut to release the whey and separate from the whey. They'll sort of naturally start to fall over, and I'll cut them into some smaller pieces. So you can see the top now. You can see the cubes and the tower forming. Like I said, tall tower of cubes, and they're going to sort of slide down. And we'll cut them into 1-inch pieces, and then we'll stir for gently again, on and off, for about 20 minutes. And that will condense the curds. They'll release whey and become much firmer. All right, so I'm kind of just gently stirring the cut curds around the outside of the pot. You can see the big chunks floating, and they'll continue to separate from the whey, the curds in the whey, and sort of naturally breaking into the size pieces we want. So we'll just stir a little bit, give it a little bit of a rest, stir a little more in a couple minutes, and we'll do that for the next 30 minutes. Okay, so I've been stirring every few minutes for the last 30 minutes using this black curd skimmer. And also use this to help scoop out the curds in the next step into a cheesecloth lined colander. But you can see that the curds are nice and pillowy now, as they say. They look great. They're sitting under the whey, so you can't really see them that well. But we're going to let them now just rest for about 5 minutes. And then I'm going to transfer them from this pot into a colander lined with cheesecloth. And then I'll have I'll do that in the sink. And then after it drains a bit, I'll put the colander inside a larger bowl so they can continue to drain for about a total of an hour and a half. And we'll show you that in just a few minutes. All right, so now we're going to transfer the curds from the pot of milk into the colander that's lined with cheesecloth. And I've got a nice large farmhouse sink, so I've got everything sitting right here. You can, if you have a smaller sink, just set the pot of milk up on the edge, whatever works for you. I'm going to use this scoop, and we're going to put our cheese curds in here to drain. And we'll let them drain about 90 minutes. We'll flip them a couple of times, as you'll see. They look beautiful. You can see how nice the curds look. It looks like we got a pretty nice yield as well. Should be able to make some very nice feta from this. And nice to leave all the whey behind here. And a lot of people you can use the whey to make ricotta. You can use the whey in your garden. Sometimes you just don't have an opportunity. You can discard the whey, but you can do other things with the whey also. And we're getting, again, a nice yield of curds. So I'm scooping them out. And again, I'll let them drain. I'll let them drain in the sink for about 30 minutes, and then I'll move them. I'll put the colander in a larger bowl so they're not sitting in any way that drips out, and let them continue to drain the rest of that time. And that'll be the step before we move these into a cheese mold to drain. Now, you don't have to drain them in a cheese mold. I like the nice square shape, a nice block of feta. So we're going to be using square cheese molds today. And we'll be forming some nice square blocks of feta that way. But you can just drain it in cheesecloth and enjoy your feta that way as well. Have a nice solid mass by the time you're done, as opposed to individual blocks. All right, so got quite a nice curd yield. We're going to let those drain, and we'll be back again shortly. Hey, while our curds are draining, let me show you how we warm the milk. We do recommend using a double boiler method. So this large pot is actually the outer pot, and you put about 4 inches of water in this pot. Then I put a probe down in there, like a kind of a barbecue thermometer probe, so I know what the water temperature is in the bottom. And then we put the second pot inside. This will hold up to 3 gallons of milk for this particular one. And it allows the milk to warm up very slowly, so you can control it. Usually I find it about 25 degrees to 30 degrees hotter in the water temperature target. I shut off the heat, and the milk and the water temperature usually come together right about exactly where we're looking for, whether it's 86 in a mesophilic cheese, or in this case, 93 today. So it worked really well, and just it's good to use a double boiler when you are warming up your milk. Some people today use a sous vide water bath. That works really great also. So different ways to do it, but that's how we did that today. And then we take a look. You can see we've got the curds draining. They look great. We've got a really nice yield, and really happy with how they're looking right now. So we're going to let them drain for 90 minutes. Like I said, they're in the process. I'll lift out the colander and pour some of the whey out. And one other item is the whey. I mentioned earlier the things you could do with whey. Another is that a lot of people do like to make their brine using whey. So you can do that also. Use your whey to make a brine. In this case, I'm not going to brine the feta that we're making today. I plan to salt it and store it that way. But if you're going to store it in brine, that's another option. All right, so we have been draining the curds for an hour and a half, and what we're going to do now is transfer these curds into these square molds. I've washed these thoroughly and let them dry. I have a draining tray ready, which is a great little device. It sits next to the sink, and you can't see it, but it's slightly tilted, so all the whey will just drip into the sink. And we're going to drain the curds in these molds, kind of shaped into squares like feta. I'll take half of the curd mass. Well, I'll take it in pieces, and we'll push it together into the molds. You can see it's a nice big mass now. I may need a third mold. We have quite a few curds. I do have a third mold ready if I need it. But the curds will compress considerably as we begin to mill them back mold them in here and press them. They'll compress. We won't really press them, but there'll be a light pressure on them. And they'll form a really nice square cheese. I think I probably will need maybe a third mold. We'll see. Anyway, you can get these. You want to get it as full as you can because they're going to compress quite a bit as they continue to drain. And oh yeah, 2 is going to be perfect. So we're going to get these curds distributed nicely between the 2. And again, they'll compress down about 50% as we have them drain together here. So then later on we'll let them drain really good and dry, and then we'll salt them, let them dry a little bit more. So this will be draining at room temp, around 75 degrees, perfect. And these are stackable molds, so I can actually set one inside the other, and use the weight of one to drain. I'm sorry, to apply pressure and have this one help drain. Then I'll switch them every couple hours. I'll switch them a little sooner at first to get a nice flat top on this one. You can already see whey is seeping out the bottom right here. Again, this will just drip down into the sink, and we'll let them continue to dry and drain over the next 8 hours, or you can go a little longer. You can even go up to a couple of days if you, after overnight, I'd move them into a cooler temperature around 55. But if they're continuing to drain whey, we're going to want to drain them a little longer. So we'll keep an eye on them. We'll update everybody as we continue to form and drain the feta. Okay, so I had the two molds stacked one on top of one another overnight for about 8 hours and about 10 hours really. And before I went to sleep last night, I switched them out a couple of times so that the top one would be on the bottom one on the top. And I just flipped them, and you can see the cheeses are consolidating beautifully. And they're drying out nicely. There's still a little bit of whey coming out. We can see here, so I'm going to let them continue to dry today, but I'm going to move them into a cooler temperature in a little while, about 55, into a small refrigerator I have set there. And we'll let them continue to dry out just a little bit longer. All right, so you can see the cheeses have formed up nicely after about 12 hours, but they're still a little wet. They're still seeping whey, so I want to let them dry out for another day, but I want to move them to a cooler temperature. So I'm going to move them into this aging box, which you can see here. And to keep, I've got a lid to go over it. To keep the humidity up, I put a small chafing dish with a little piece of sterile sponge in it. It's got a mat here and then a draining platform, so the whey will seep through and allow the cheese to continue to dry. So we'll just move them into here. And you can see from they're still quite wet, letting some whey drip out. So we'll let them continue to dry at a cooler temperature before we move on to salting them in probably another day. Okay, welcome back. I've let the feta continue to drain, but at a cooler temperature for another, not quite a full day. They look nice and like they've done weeping whey, and they're drying out nicely. We want to salt them now, and let the salt will, of course, impart flavor, but also pull out still any additional whey over the next couple of days. We're going to do that by cutting these into cubes. So we're going to cut these nice feta blocks, and look at that, they're cutting very nicely into cubes. And I'll do one of them on the video. And then what we'll do is salt them. We'll use cheese-making salt, as we mentioned earlier. No iodine or caking agents, just cheese salt. And then we're going to let them drain in a colander so that the salt will pull some additional whey out. You'll see some dripping. So again, we want to make sure they're sitting in a colander in a bowl above another larger bowl. So first we'll just put the cubes in here and work them and gently salt them in the pot, the bowl rather. And I just take a little bit of salt, and you want to kind of get it onto all sides. Doesn't take a lot of salt, but you're going to want to get it sprinkled nicely over the feta. The cheese is looking really nice, and it'll continue to when we say dry, we mean pull out whey. So in this case, we'll see some dripping, as I mentioned, and we'll simply going to let these salted curds now, use just a little bit more. We're going to move them into this bowl, and then we'll set it on top. And I'll cover the top with plastic so the curds themselves don't dry out. I'll put them back in the refrigerator at about 50 degrees, 50 to 55 for another day or two to continue to drain thoroughly. All right, looking good. We got some good looking feta coming our way. All right, everybody, welcome back. So we've had the feta now in the refrigerator at about 50 degrees for the last 24 hours, salted, and continuing to drain and absorb salt and become more flavored and develop the taste as well. And actually, you can see it looks really pretty. It is really pretty. It's gorgeous feta. I've taken a little nibble. The texture is fantastic. The flavor is amazing. And we've got a great feta here. What we're going to show now is how to store the feta so you can make it last a while for you. And there's different ways we can do that. Brine, oil, we can crumble and freeze it. So we'll kind of show you what we're going to do there, and you can go do some of it one way and some of it another, and whichever way you prefer. Okay, so there are different ways that you can store your feta. Just like there's a couple different ways you can salt your feta. You can dry salt it. You can brine it in a heavy brine, and then air dry it, and then brine it in a storage brine. Or you can store it in oil. So the choice is really, once we've salted ours for a couple of days, it's in great condition, it's ready to consume, it's ready to store. We can either store it in a light storage brine, which is what we're going to do in this jar. I've crumbled a bit of the feta, and we're going to store that in the freezer. We'll just freeze it, and it can last a good long time. That's great for salads, great for toppings on street tacos, things like that. It's just a delicious topping. Then I'm going to save a few to eat right away and share with others in the next couple of days. So I'll put a few little blocks just in the refrigerator like that. And so to make a light storage brine, I took a gallon of water and removed a quart. So I had 3 quarts left, added 8 ounces of salt. Then you dissolve that. And then it's very important that you add a teaspoon and a half of calcium chloride and a teaspoon of distilled white vinegar to adjust the pH. The calcium chloride will keep the feta from having the calcium leached out of the blocks, and it turns slimy if you don't use it. So you want to definitely use the calcium chloride in your storage brine. So I added the cubes of feta, filled it to the top, so there's very little air. And the jars, of course, you start off with nice and clean. And we've got, I'll label these afterwards, and we've got some feta that should store for a good long while, many months. And again, I've crumbled this feta. It's ready to use now on salads, toppings, whatever you want to do. I'm going to put the top on that, and I'm just going to, I'll either keep some fresh, it's great for another week or so, and then after that, I'd rather keep it frozen if we have extra. Probably get eaten pretty quick. And again, these few cubes, I kept a few extras out to share with others at the office. They love tasting our cheese when we make cheese. So that is the end of our story today. So you can come to www.thecheesemaker.com and find all you need to make your own amazing feta cheese at home. Well, thank you again for joining us, learning how to make feta cheese at home. Again, you can do the same. Come to our site, check us out, www.thecheesemaker.com. We've got everything you need. If you want to really get started an easy way, you can go with one of our kits. We have a real simple starter kit for feta and chev. We have a deluxe mozzarella ricotta feta kit. So we have some great choices to get you going there. And we'd love to help you get started making cheese in your own kitchen.